Hey, health junkies! It's time for The Health Fix. Join your host, Dr. Janine Krause, as she gives you a dose of what you need to know and do right now to take control of your health from the inside out, to rebel against aging, look damn good, fight stress, and laugh every day.
Hey, health junkies. If you suspect you have food sensitivities or have joint pain, stiff joints, chronic gut issues, wake up with a stuffy nose or puffy eyes, are fatigued all day, can't sleep, and are gaining weight, or even have chronic headaches, listen up. This podcast is for you. Today, I'm interviewing Julie Daniluk. She's a registered holistic nutritionist, a natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and the author of 3 best-selling books. We're going to be talking today about how you can become your own food detective and determine what foods agree with you and which ones don't. So, to heal your digestive system and inflammation for good, it's time to pay attention to your gut. Julie has extensive experience sleuthing out her food sensitivities that started in childhood. So she's combined her experience and what she's seen with her patients, and she has a new book called The Hot Detox. Now, you might be thinking, The Hot Detox, that sounds interesting. Well, it's a guide to using Chinese medicine principles to restore your gut health while teaching you how to determine what foods agree with you and which ones don't. In this episode, we are going to talk all about how fad diets don't work in the long run because each gut is truly unique. So listen in as Julie and I dish on the most sustainable way to restore your gut health with food, and how you can get to the point that nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. All right, on with the podcast. Hey, health junkies, I've got Julie Daniluk on the line with me today, and we are going to be talking about her Hot Detox program, and we're going to be talking about her books and all kinds of fun things related to health, because Julie has a similar pathway in terms of food sensitivity since a young age, and also with her mission to be fit and healthy beyond 100, like me. So Julie, say hello.
Hello, I'm so stoked. Thank you so much for inviting me into your tribe to have this conversation. It's so important. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think your mission, that I want to start with that, is of finding and helping folks discover their food allergies and help them discover what foods agree with their body versus adhering to strict diets or fad diets is where I want to start. Because I think too many people are pigeonholing themselves into, let's say, keto diets and things of that nature, and they're making themselves feel pretty darn sick.
Mm-hmm. I really want to explore that conversation around keto with you, because keto is really a medicinal prescription for a short period of time. I don't think it's really the long-term lived. If you consider the longest living people on Earth, they actually all have carbohydrates in their diet. So it is it's important that if someone had a very specific need for it, epilepsy, cancer, neurological problems, sure, it's a prescription. But I think for the average human being, it's just so important for us to look at all those anti-inflammatory foods that actually do have some carbohydrates attached to them. Like one thing that really comes to mind is all the berries, all the fruit that actually have very profoundly anti-inflammatory elements to them. And that's why I really want people to kind of fine-tune it and find their own livet. An anti-inflammatory livet versus a diet will help them also stay the course and not really develop this swing of like, I'm on the diet bandwagon. Oh, I fell off the wagon. Let's get rid of the wagon. Like a really usable, beautiful way of life that will have you enrolled and really evolving it. That's a big thing, is that I think, don't you find that as we discover new things and our health changes over time, that our thank goodness, our livet is an evolution.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do think, speaking of evolution over time, a lot of people come into, and I know you've got a book related to this with the slimming foods and hormones. People come into my office and I'll start to get to know them in their 20s, and then they start getting into their 30s and things change. Your body changes. We can't just keep, eating the same way our whole life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You really, what works for you when you're young and fertile would be completely different than when you're menopausal, for example, right? It's really important for us to gauge up and gauge down. And as our metabolism shifts, recalibrating how much food do you really need? I find personally, I've been falling in love lately with intermittent fasting, and it more being about daylight eating than truly intermittent fasting, like really looking at the work of Dr. Sachin Panda and how cool we realize that the circadian rhythms dictate how much we should be eating. And I'm amazed at how little I need to feel awesome. So I want people to remember that if they're having low energy, it's not necessarily solved by having more calories in. It can be actually just tweaking your timing and reaching for the right foods can make a massive difference in your energy levels.
That's a huge point, because I think for a lot of people, that's one big hang up. Like, oh my gosh, I can't eat as much as I used to, but I feel better when I don't. And I think a lot of us really need to get into our bodies and not be so disconnected a little bit and think about that. Because what you're mentioning with that daylight eating, the circadian rhythm, that's fascinating to me.
It is.
Because
it's really fascinating.
I think
and if
about
people want to research more. Dr. Sachin Panda is the head researcher on that. And it's so cool. His name is so easy to remember, Dr. Panda. And he just has such incredible detail on the fact that melatonin, which is your sleep hormone, starts to rise in the evening and it trumps your insulin. So if you're eating carbohydrates at night, you're actually really elevating your personal blood sugar because your insulin is being trumped by your melatonin. So that's really quite harmful to your body because that blood sugar is going to hang out. It's going to create more advanced glycation end products, age for short. So it's literally aging you on a cellular level to have your blood sugar run high and to not have that insulin readily available to throw that lovely carbohydrate into your Krebs cycle within your mitochondria. So it's so important for us to avoid late night eating. And you're talking to a person who's like a recovered nocturnal binger. Like I used to be lonely or sad or frustrated or bored, and I would binge on carbohydrates. And most of my carbs were consumed after 7 p.m. So to actually get a grip on that, I just want to tell people that it's totally possible, that I believe everything is movable, and that you just feel so good when you avoid eating late night.
I agree. So you mentioned 7 p.m. because that seems to be the witching hour. Plus, I also use it in terms of explanation in Chinese medicine theory, with the stomach qi kind of dropping after that hour. How do you explain this to folks? Like what hour, what time frame? Because I think a lot of people eat late. I know a lot of people eat late, and I know that for a lot of people, their biggest meal of the day is the evening meal.
Yeah, so I just really show them the really cortisol spikes in the morning. That's your hormone that really gets things moving, gets you motivated at work. And then your melatonin spikes in the evening, or you hope it does, because a lot of people continue with the cortisol well into the evening and the rhythm gets thrown off, and that's where a lot of their insomnia comes from. But as we stop eating, we allow that natural expression of completion of our digestion so that the focus can shift. Because as a person who practices acupuncture, you can certainly help people understand that your liver is very active at night, helping to remove toxins from your body. So if you are drinking alcohol at night, if you're having rich meals at night, you're bogging the liver down, and it will get fairly frustrated and wake you up in the middle of the night. So that's why it's just so good to finish that food. I mean, 7 is kind of the average because let's face it, during the summer, we have a little bit more leeway because we have long days. But in the winter months, oh my goodness, like being here in Canada, we try to finish eating by like 6 because the sun is already gone and our melatonin is supposed to be coming up. So that's one thing to remember, is that obviously most mammals eat less and somewhat semi-hibernate, if not full hibernate. And therefore in the winter, do we need to be eating these massive meals? I think that we do it for comfort. A lot of people are attracted to carbohydrates to stay warm in the winter, but the timing is everything. And if you want to avoid that 8-pound weight gain that a lot of people are on, like a lot of people will gain 5 to 8 pounds per year. So over a decade, boom, they've put on, up to 80 pounds. And they wonder, why has this crept up over time? And it really can be just shifting timing and really working on focusing all your energy on when your stomach is at its peak, which we know eating, a really good meal between 11 and 2 would be like the ideal time when your stomach is like completely ready for that delicious meal. And I find, as a person who's had low thyroid genetically, that I need to feed my body pretty early in the morning, because they've shown now that intermittent fasting through the whole morning, which is very popular nowadays, have a coffee, don't eat anything, is incredibly hard on your thyroid. And women, like, oh my goodness, please listen, like, thyroid is everything as you're moving into menopause. If you can have healthy adrenals, healthy thyroid, you just have such a different experience, because our adrenals are supposed to take over for our ovaries as we age. And I find it really poor advice for people to be fasting until noon, when your adrenals are putting out so much cortisol to compensate for not eating. Your body spikes cortisol when it's in that mode. And that's going to zap your thyroid, because, as you know, there's an axis, there's a connection between those two.
Absolutely. I've been debating on that so much, because so many people are trying to do the intermittent fasting. But as I've said on the podcast multiple times too, I find that intermittent fasting in the morning, it's one of those things for folks with thyroid and hormonal issues. I don't find it to be the best. And you kind of explained it perfectly there in terms of the cortisol. It's better to lay low on the foods in the evening and cut it down then.
And I know a lot of people say to me, well, that just doesn't work within my family setting. And I get that. I mean, right now, our whole family's together. It's summer. And most meals end at 9. And I'm just like literally looking at my watch going, guys, this is ridiculous. Like, we've got to move this dinner time a little bit earlier. And I mean, I never say it out loud, but it's definitely an ongoing conversation. I'm just like always fascinated why people, don't even try to start eating as a family until 7 or 8 at night. So just best practice, like when you can, obviously trying. And one thing, another sweet point that's really worked for me is I intermittent fast very, very consistently, like every day, but I only do 14 hours versus 16 hours because by having a reasonable fasting window, I'm spiking ketones for 2 hours a day. Like anything past 12, you're, clawing back the negative cells in your body and you're helping make more ketones in your body. But I'm not pushing it into extreme hunger. Yeah. I'm not pushing myself into that cortisol spike. Because for me, controlling my cortisol has to be my priority. Because, I did a lot of adrenal rushing, bit of an adrenal junkie with a lot of extreme sports. And now I'm trying to make up for that as I get, close to 50.
No, I have to agree with you. And I think a lot of people, if it's not extreme sports, it's just lifestyle factors and, high energy jobs, things of that nature. It's something to really think about.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
So, it's a biggie for sure.
It is probably top on my list of things to kind of have people focusing on. And I like that you say around the 14-hour. Now, granted, as you are talking about everything here, it's personalized. 14 hours might not work for everybody, but
sure.
It definitely, that's kind of where I sit. I don't like people doing more than a 16-hour, especially thyroids.
Yeah, I just want to give women permission to be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Anything past 12 hours is reducing your breast cancer risk.
Ooh.
So if that's all you can manage, at least you're giving yourself that heads up, right?
That's
we can
cool.
just say, that's a great study that I actually heard from Dr. Rhonda Patrick, that really at least 12 hours. Just give your body a little rest. And that's so easy to do. That's like 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. 90% of the planet can hit that target, right?
Absolutely.
And then past that, the circadian rhythm fast is a minimum of 13 hours. And then I like to do 14 hours because I find it's easy enough. Like, that means cut food out at 7, start eating at 9.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy, right? It's not like you're starving at all.
No. And I think mentioning starving, that's a really good point, because I've noticed in your history, you have a little bit of an eating disorder history. And I definitely actually came out and realized I had one within the last year. And
Wow.
with the really long fasts, when you start getting into 18, 21 hours, your mind likes to tell you all kinds of crazy stuff. And I realized that I was doing longer fasts and then ended up in like a huge binge cycle.
Exactly. That's my concern. I've had clients who are binging so hard in their 4-hour eating window. So they're doing like a 20-hour fast. And then in that window, they're jamming food into their mouths till they're hurting their stomach. So it's just, and I've come off that. I mean, having had bulimia at one point in my life, just having so much in the way of, I could plow back 3,000-4,000 calories in a couple hours. And it's just no wonder my digestive health disintegrated quickly. Mm-hmm. And anyone who's struggling, just know that there is a way out, and the big way out is community. And that's why I run so many coaching programs, because I want people to have that feeling that there's someone else out there who's been through it. And, all really good 12-step programs have that support as a way of saying, let's not do this alone. Let's have the, because I find the loneliness and the secrecy and the self-blame to be the biggest culprits of perpetuation of eating issues. And that once we break down the stigma and we get connected and we kind of help hold each other accountable, we have tremendous healing. And when we get to what we really want underneath, because let's face it, the food is just a symptom, but what's going on underneath that? What are you truly feeling? What are you eating down? Mm-hmm. That's been a big piece of healing for me.
Absolutely.
And I hope everyone can start to ask themselves that. And that's why the food journal, and I know you believe in that, like, it's so good to write, why am I eating this? What are my feelings around when I'm eating this? How does this food make me feel now, and then in 3 hours, and then tomorrow? Because unfortunately, most food intolerances are felt the next day. You feel high as a kite because you're jamming your adrenaline, your cortisol high when you finally get what you want. It's later when you pay the piper.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's that either that next morning where your eyes are so puffy you look like heck, or your gut just is killing.
Yeah, totally. Or you feel so low. Like, I have been in a place of complete blackness where it is 100% the food. And this is the weird thing. You always ask yourself, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which came first, the food binge or the bad feelings, right? Mm-hmm. But I will say that the food binge, when you come off the high and you go down into the valley of actually having withdrawal from that food, can make you feel so low, scary low. And that's when demons come out to talk to you and say very negative things that are not truthful. And that's when we want to be in communication. We want to be with somebody to help us, because we have, I think reality, when we have mirrors of real people in our life saying, okay, is that a story that we're writing that's in our heads because we're feeling really crummy in this massive allergic reaction that we're having?
My goodness. Yeah. I did that to myself for years, and I wonder how many people out there are in their 40s, still struggling with this, 40s and beyond, and haven't addressed any of it, and just given more and more more and more of, I was going to say Lexapro, but more and more of any type of antidepressant, over and over again. Yeah, it's definitely, I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing, and I'm glad that you have your 3 books out there. And I know today we are going to be talking specifically about the hot detox. So I think we should start diving into what is this hot detox? Because I think some people might be wondering, is it, what does this mean? What is the concept? So enlighten us.
Sure. I mean, so many people, when they think the hot detox, they're like, you know what? I've been having hot flashes. The idea of a hot detox, nah. But actually what it means is, in traditional Chinese medicine, there's foods that actually are warming for the digestive system. And then there's foods that are cooling for the digestive system. And in a cold, damp, unfortunately, when our digestive system, which in traditional Chinese medicine they call it spleen qi, when we have a lot of cold and dampness in our digestive system, we end up with a lot of IBS symptoms. So we end up with the bloating, the gas, the overgrowth of yeast or negative bacteria. We end up with, oftentimes the food doesn't digest properly, so it can regurgitate. We end up with a lot of diarrhea symptoms or constipation symptoms. So all of that digestive woes in traditional Chinese medicine, we want to eat foods that support a process of reducing the dampness, which the number one culprit for dampness, which I know will make people cringe, is dairy, because dairy is very cold and mucus forming and damp. And then you've got sugar. So I find it so funny that the number one crave food that people often go for is ice cream. Right? And traditional Chinese medicine, it's called triple yin death, because you have sugar, you have dairy, and then you have it frozen. So it's so cold and hard on your system. So in the hot detox program, what we really do is encourage people to embrace warming, soothing, easy to digest foods. So I had to do this because I had abused my gut for so long, because my binges were cold cereal with lots of cold milk on it. So I would love like 3 or 4 servings of Honey Nut Cheerios with piles of cold milk on it, right? And then piles of ice cream with cookies. That sort of food was just so damaging to my gut lining that when I went to Thailand and got really, really bad food poisoning that nearly killed me, I ended up coming home with post-infectious colitis.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, I mean, I literally was paralyzed from the neck down. My electrolytes were so thrown off that I couldn't move. So I needed to be saved with radical antibiotic therapy in hospital, and then was transferred home, and just my gut never worked properly again. And that's when I decided, I'll never forget my husband holding my head in his hands, because I was violently sick again. Because once you're that sick, and once you have terrible negative bacteria taking up your digestive system, I just was radically sick all the time. And he looked deep into my eyes and he said, "Julie, what in the world are you going to do to heal?" Because I really was slipping away, and I felt like I was 60 years old and I was only 30. And so I looked back up at him and I realized, like, here's a beautiful, talented, intelligent man. And that I wasn't just sick, I was pulling him down into it. And I have to say, like, I think my love for him really had me double down on my commitment. And I just said to him, like, I'll do anything to heal. I'll do anything. And that's the next day I woke up and was just like, today's the day. I hit my bottom. And I just wrote down every single food that I thought I could still digest, that I noticed I had the least amount of symptoms to, and the foods that were radically causing me harm, the ice cream, I used to hide entire boxes of chocolate chip cookies in my clothing hamper. I had to get rid of that. And like, I literally needed to clean up my act like an alcoholic. I had to just really find substitutions initially, so that I wasn't breaking up cold turkey. And then eventually you lose the taste for these foods that hurt you. You literally, your taste buds change, and it gets easier and easier to eat healing, healthy food. And the rest is history. I wrote my first book, and thank goodness it sold over 100,000 copies, and it's around the world. And I'm so grateful to Hay House, who picked up the book in the States. And the second book was a lot to do with having hormonal imbalance and wanting to fix that. And then my latest book, I'm like, let's take this to the next level. So the Hot Detox is really my favorite book and the one that most people are attracted to because the recipes are easier. The program is so easy and makes sense. And the food's delicious. I promise you the food's delicious. And the superfoods are simply things that you add in instead of something that you have to, you must have for the recipe to work. Because I realize that a lot of people live in areas where it's hard to access all the superfoods. Mm-hmm. So why don't we just focus on a lot of the healthy healing foods that everyone has access to and talk about those a little bit so that people feel inspired. Like avocados. Most people, especially in your neck of the woods, have access to avocados, and they're insanely good for you. They help balance your hormones. They're so delicious. They are a substrate for everything from guacamole to ice cream. Substitutes, they're so fun.
I have probably told people that you could put me on an island with avocados, macadamia nuts, and a little dark chocolate, and I'm good. Nothing else. Right. I could live off of them.
Yeah, it's great.
So let's talk a little bit about the Hot Detox because on your website you've got a 3-day, 7-day, 10-day, and 21-day menu suggestions. So that's kind of cool. What for a 3-day Hot Detox, is this kind of getting someone back after, say, a vacation or a birthday or something of that nature? Or is it just a quick, dive in?
3 days, sometimes people just want a very short commitment. They just want to see what it feels like, right? Mm-hmm. So that's just a really short commitment, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or a Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And you just try it on and see what you think. It's liquid. So you are, in a way, taking incredible amount of stress off your gut because you're pre-digesting everything in your blender so that you don't have to do any work. So for people who are really dealing with digestive upset, they find having blender smoothies just takes the work out of it. And also it's very portable. So it's something that you can carry around with you because you're just filling up a bunch of mason jars and you're good to go.
I love that you say a bunch of mason jars. My friends make fun of me because my whole cabinet, they're like, she doesn't have Tupperware, she has jars. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, because they're glass.
Plastic is evil.
Cause hormonal disruption.
Let's talk about this, the liquid-based part of the Hot Detox for a minute, because, I think a lot of folks, and I seem to see this in my practice a lot, is ladies will end up with acute gastritis or acute ulcers quite often from different dietary things happening, different, alcohol issues, etc. Wouldn't your Hot Detox be perfect for these folks to kind of heal that gut lining
and that's why I just want to go on the record is because of people's ulcerations and because I had colitis, I never used black pepper or cayenne pepper in my actual recipes because you could add that in if your gut could handle it, but I just didn't want to make a point of it. So that's why this is very soothing and easy to digest for most people. Nice. Absolutely. Yeah, it's great.
So let's talk a little bit about being your own food detective.
Yes, I love that.
Know that you started the journey of having food sensitivities back when you were 7. And so you've got a long history, even though, same with me, when you're a kid that things bother you and you should probably stay off them and you feel better. But then you rebel sometime in your teens and then have to come back to it. Talk to us a little bit about how you get folks to really buy into being their own food detective and be present in their body and figure out what is going on.
I think a big thing that works is if somebody finds it challenging to write things down, is also just taking photos and having an accountability partner. That has been really helpful. And also it is a good idea to journal daily because it's so good to journal anyway. Like, how am I feeling? And to have an expression, because there's so many people I talk to who kind of bottle up how they're feeling because they don't want to have an impact on the people around them. So they just don't speak what's truly in their heart. And to have that privacy to put it down and also make those connections, because sometimes the food that you're eating can be literally a friend that you don't have. So if loneliness is a big piece for you, then it wouldn't surprise me that, there's so many times in my life where I was going through a rough breakup or a family member had died. That's like a big spike for me, where it's very easy to have that food be a friend. But we have to remember that those friends, it's a double-edged sword, and that friend, if the food is inappropriate and no longer serving you, can be kind of like a bad boyfriend that is harmful, and yet we're looped into an addiction cycle with it. And once we break free of that, we have no idea how good we can feel until we're free. And that's where I hope people could just borrow my confidence on how good you'll feel if you just try it on. Don't believe me, just try it on. And really the proof is in the attempt for you. Just to say, I'm going to move away from white foods. Like, instead of trying to conquer everything in a day, we just look at the biggest culprits first. And that would be white flour, white sugar, and if you're willing, dairy, because dairy is very mucus forming. It's a crazy statistic that few people know, that over 90% of people in certain Asian cultures are actually completely intolerant to lactose. And over 75% of people who live in, who are native, as in North American native, or actually from the African continent, have a lactose intolerance. Because in those areas, if we look at epigenetics, we actually were, those cultures did not have the need for dairy enzymes past weaning. So past the age of 3 or 4, they didn't have dairy in their diet. So they evolved to not need lactase. So that's why it's really important for people within certain pockets of, like, know your heritage and eat really as your great-great-grandparents would have eaten, would be something that would be really helpful for you. To just explore, just try it on and see if that's helpful. But dairy is a huge addiction because it does trigger opiate receptors in the brain. And that's why I find some people, like, they do really well, they're working hard on their program, but just giving up that darn cheese or ice cream is like a really big thing for them. So that's why I have so many cheese substitutes, ice cream substitutes in my book, because I'm like, okay, listen, try the coconut ice cream sweetened with honey initially, to just try to have that same mouthfeel and that same satisfaction. And it's delicious. There's so many great brands that are even commercially available now that you don't even need to make it at home.
I know, gosh. I think back to, like, we're similar in age. I think back to when I was a kid and having issues, and I'm like, there was nothing. There was nothing out there.
When I was 7, it was like waxy rice cakes coated with terrible carob.
Oh my God.
That was my big treat growing up.
I remember those. Those and the stinking sesame, like, sticks. That's all I had for totally. Snacks. It was so gross.
Yeah. When people complain right now, I'm like, you have no idea. You are living in, like, the land of bounty, like an oasis of awesome health food now, especially with online purchases. Within 24 hours, you can have unbelievable substitutes drop shipped to your door, right? So even if you live in a remote location without awesome health food stores, it's pretty easy to shop now.
Yeah, I'm impressed. With, well, Amazon here, you can order it and you can sometimes get it in one day, and that's trippy. But totally. I don't even know what to think about that. But yeah, like Thrive Market, some of the other ones out there, it's pretty impressive. So let's talk a little bit about, I like how the hot detox has the dip your toes in for 3 days. Then we've got like a full week of doing things. And then we've got the 21 days. Do you find that when people do the full 21 days, they get better results? They're going to stick with things. Yeah,
absolutely. I would love people to have it as a jumping off point into a live it versus a diet. Mm-hmm. So I believe that this will help you tune into what works for you. And then when you do the reintroduction, you go, whoa, that feels nasty. I don't want to feel that again. And then you let it go, right? Yeah. And that's the reason why this elimination program is really helpful, is because until you have that beautiful baseline of how healthy you can feel off these foods, then you can't really figure it out. Because beyond allergy testing, which is IgE testing, which is blood work, or scratch tests, which aren't like the only thing we need to worry about. My issue is that there's much more subtle things that can impact you and make you feel just as crummy. The food intolerances, the food sensitivities. And that's why food journaling is such a good tool, because the food allergy testing will only point out, I don't know how many times you, as a practitioner, you can relate to this. People come in and they say, my doctor tested me for celiac disease and I can eat wheat. I have no problem with it. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, that's only one antibody that they tested you for. And what if it's still making you feel bloated and you're having terrible digestive woes with it? Are you willing to just try other substitutions? Because bread is what you're after. There's delicious bread. Like I have something called Life-Changing Loaf that doesn't have any gluten in it, but it tastes really close to bread and it's very deeply satisfying. So could we just do that direct substitution so that you're not feeling that that constant craving? You're feeling satisfied, but you're really checking in with yourself, whether being off of gluten reduces your pain in your joints or reduces your migraines or reduces your negative depression. I had one client who was suicidal until she got off of gluten. And I mean, I don't want to generalize. I'm just telling you one specific small example of how moods can dramatically improve once we're off our allergens. And I know you know that. As a naturopath.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point that you brought up, because I do have a lot of patients that'll come and be like, well, I'm not celiac, so I can have gluten. And I'm like, yeah, but your body has different communication and you know how you feel when you eat it, because obviously you wouldn't have been tested for it if there wasn't something in your head asking about that.
Yes. And unfortunately, celiac disease is only one, well, thank goodness, only 1 in 117 people. But there's a whole lot of people sensitive or intolerant to gluten, or their gut microbiome is so disturbed and they have so much yeast on board that no matter what grain they eat, even if it's rice or corn, they're also feeling nasty. So it's really just kind of thinking outside the box that gluten is not the only negative.
Absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it was good that you were mentioning too, like migraines, mood. I think a lot of people are like, well, is this detox going to help me? And I think if you could give us more symptoms that people might have, such as stuffy nose, runny nose, things of that nature, that would be other clues that the hot detox might be something you want to try out.
Sure. So people have taken on the hot detox and we've got amazing testimonials. So I'll start at the top. So yes, headaches and also skin conditions really clear up when we cleanse the body, especially using some of the liver cleansing foods, because liver and skin are so closely tied together. So we see a real reduction in eczema and psoriasis and really serious issues there. And then moving down, acne, having sinusitis, chronic sinusitis, chronic ear infections. When we have a lot of digestive inflammation and a lot of dampness in the body, then our body's way more predisposed to having infections. So if you're someone who's chronically dealing with bronchial issues, if you have asthma, if you have any sort of consistent overproduction of mucus and you're coughing or you're runny nose, if you have seasonal allergies, we want to look at reducing inflammation in the digestive system. And then, of course, the gut, starting with the stomach and how many people are dealing with GERD, how many people are dealing with chronic heartburn, how many people are thinking that they need to take antacids, that they need proton pump inhibitors, when really what they need is they actually need to balance their digestive, digestive acids, the digestive fluids in their stomach that help them digest their food better. So instead of inhibiting hydrochloric acid, some people find that by reducing the actual pH of the stomach, using things like the lemon and the apple cider vinegar and all the things that you find in the hot detox, their digestion improves instead of gets worse, which is awesome. We only avoid sour things if we have an active ulcer. Otherwise, it's incredibly helpful for digestion. And then we also see just an incredible reduction in the classic symptoms of IBS. So people stop having this swing of constipation, diarrhea. We want to have a perfect 4, that perfect in the middle of the road stool sample. That's that nice 8 to 12 inches long, nice 1.5 inches thick, that snakes out into the bowl without any effort. You shouldn't strain, and it should be easy for you. And that's one thing that is so lovely, that when we reduce the cold, the damp out of your food supply and move to foods that are slightly pre-digested, that's why we do cook things down in a slow cooker and make bone broth and have things that are just so easy on your system. That is just a beautiful thing. Absolutely.
I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for breakfast since we're doing this so early. I'm like, what would be a hot detox breakfast? Tell us about that.
Well, I love to break my fast with having, I know it's summer, so it's like, really? But having some bone broth in the morning with some lovely spinach thrown into it. So I make a lot of salad soups.
Nice.
They're so darn easy and they're so portable. Instead of having like a raw salad, if you're having digestive troubles, in traditional Chinese medicine, they'll say just warm up the greens and they make them much easier to digest. So I do have a lot of that. But also there's some wonderful smoothie bowls in the book. For you, I imagine making coconut yogurt would be a good fit. Or buying coconut yogurt. Like there's so many good brands on the market. Oh, it's so cool to see the explosion of dairy-free yogurts that are well tolerated, that taste great, that have live cultures in them. A lot of fermentation recipes in the book that are easy to make. Yeah, so that's like, I'll have one of my hot detox crackers with some lovely faux cheese that's made with, fermented cashews, or I'll have coconut yogurt with some beautiful fresh berries. Know that in traditional Chinese medicine, one of the easiest berries are in that whole family of fruit. Cherries are very warming in traditional Chinese medicine. So we're really at the peak of cherry season, especially in your part of the world. So please enjoy a lot of cherries if you are eating carbohydrates, because they're also mildly phytoestrogenic. So they're incredible for ladies facing down perimenopause. All through your 40s, you're going through perimenopause, and it's important for you to support that estrogenic part of you by having things like sweet potatoes, having some lovely, red clover tea that's in the book, having lovely alfalfa sprouts, like all these lovely foods. Flax seeds are incredibly good for supporting your estrogen, but they're not overproducing estrogen, because I know some women who are estrogen dominant, they're actually helping to fulfill those estrogen receptors and helping you have an appropriate level of estrogen, which is nice. And protects you from breast cancer. We know flax is very protective against breast cancer.
Yeah, no, the fiber content, but yes, its ability to protect you. It's a regulator. I love it.
Yes, I love that. And also a wonderful binder to negative estrogen. As we have these metabolites of estrogen, we have to get rid of them. So like having something that claws on to the negative estrogen and carries it out of your system, that would be a fantastic thing for you. So that's why I love going back to my hot detox bread. It has psyllium, it has flax seeds, it has chia, just to kind of bind onto negative stuff and help to cleanse correctly.
I love it. So you've mentioned a bunch of your recipes, and now I'm hungry.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm thinking that one of the big things that I see in my office that I'm debating on trying to figure out a little bit better with patients is I've noticed that a lot of people don't know how to cook. They don't have the basic skills. And really going into the kitchen and making food stresses them out. Well, how do you overcome that with your folks?
Well, initially I create a lot of substitution lists that allow people to buy things online because some people just really need that nourishment. You know, I've had it because know that I've studied eating psychology with the Institute of Psychology of Eating.
Cool.
Some people need that nourishment because they kind of have some trauma in their past, and they there's this broken piece of like, I need to be loved. I need to have nourishment, mother nourishment. And so they want to be fed. So a lot of people, you know, because let's face it, putting eggs in water and turning it on and boiling it into hard-boiled eggs, I mean, any human being on the planet can do that.
Yep.
They do much more complicated tasks in the day, but they'll say, I can't do it. And I say, okay, well, I think that you can, for now, rely on some very anti-inflammatory, delicious, powerful, pre-made food for you. But just know that eventually we want to have that barrier be removed. So the first thing is direct substitutions. So it just arrives and there's like, you know, I'm sure you're aware of the keto buns that are popping up everywhere where it's like flour-free, sugar-free, dairy-free, like just ready for you to eat. But then the next step up from that is just like really simple things. Like actually making bone broth is ridiculously simple. You throw stuff in a pot, you boil it up, and then you strain it off and you drink it. Like it can't be more simple than that. So it's really helping people if they're struggling. That's where some laser coaching and having a group support team sort of help you say, okay, where's the small baby steps that will help you save money? Because all these amazing products are fabulous, but they're expensive. So it's really like, do you have time or do you have money? Well, if you have neither, then we have to learn basics, right? So if you're working really hard, if you're pulling like 50-hour work weeks, then you probably are a little more flush with cash to buy the substitutions. And if you don't have a lot of money, then can you carve out some time on a Sunday to ram out 3 or 4 recipes? Because batch cooking is everything. And just doing some dead simple ones, smoothie bowls, you know, having some salads made up in mason jars, having stir fries that still taste good 2 days later. You know, that's how I get through life, because you and I work exceptionally long hours, especially in certain pockets, like September hits, I'll be working 12 to 14 hours a day. But flour, sugar, dairy never crosses my lips because nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. And if that's one message I want everyone to get, nothing tastes as good as healthy feels. And you will not understand that until you feel great, and you will not give that up for anything in the world, because it's the most sexy feeling. It's the most delicious feeling. It's the most incredible, like awe-inspiring, happy feeling. And my happiness is worth everything, even giving up birthday cake, even giving up those moments at the bar where your girlfriend's staring at you funny because you've just ordered a sugar-free mojito with no alcohol in it, and all it is like mint leaves and spritzer water because you don't feel like having a hangover the next day. You know, like you start to crave that. And that's the breakthrough that I want everyone listening to have.
Me too, because I think that you said it perfectly, because yeah, it's true. Nothing tastes as good as healthy feels, and feeling healthy and being able to function and being clear-minded and energetic. I mean, that's probably some of the biggest complaints I get from folks coming into my office, and I'm like, okay, I can do this without giving you a million supplements. All you have to do is change your diet. And people look at me like, what? I'm like, you gotta wrap your head around it. And my goodness, it's a good feeling. And talk about, you know, I've talked about with folks the high of feeling healthy versus the high from the carbs and the stuff. I'm like, because once you're healthy, you can't, nothing's going to stop that. You eat the carbs. How long does that high last? 5 minutes? 10?
Yeah. I traded in 5 minutes of feeling intensely high for 24 hours of feeling great. You know, like it's a completely different high.
Yep.
It's so sustainable. and you don't have these high highs and then low lows. You just feel like, okay, I can cope with life. And like lately, I'm not going to lie, I've had some family crisis, like a number of really ill family members. And I knew that I owed it to them to be 100% able to cope, because when I eat horribly, I end up emotionally frayed. You know, if you're a caregiver listening, like, know that you have more patience, you have more ability to pay attention in doctor's appointments. Like, no matter what your reason for getting well, I will definitely say it's 100% worth committing to it.
Absolutely.
Because what do we have in this life? We have our connections, we have our feelings. We can't take anything else with us. You know, no matter how much money you make, it cannot, like, let's just use the example of, I'm sure Steve Jobs would love to trade places with any single human being that's living right now. But unfortunately, he died very young of pancreatic cancer. And so, in my opinion, health is the conduit for every single thing you've ever wanted in your whole life. So health must be sorted as the number one priority in life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Health is your wealth. You can't
Totally.
do anything else but that. So let's tell folks how to find you. Your website is juliedaniluk.com. So JULIEDANILUK. And I'll put that on my podcast notes. Now,
and also, the good news is I have hotdetox.com, because I realized that my name was too peculiar for people to remember. So I also bought hotdetox.com. So just enjoy that, folks, as well.
All right. And now you have a TV show, Meals That Heal, correct?
Actually, my Meals That Heal TV happens on Facebook.
Okay.
And then I have a really cool show called Healthy Gourmet, which is lucky to be in many countries. So you can check out whether it's available in your country. But I know that Healthy Gourmet looks at taste versus nutrition. And so I battle off with a 5-star chef to convert people in the field. So we go visit people who have crazy diets, like, you know, massive pizza, pasta binges. And then we come in and see if we can help them find direct substitutions that are delicious, which is a really fun show.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I'll have to check that out. Now, is it recorded anywhere else and stored, like Netflix or somewhere?
No. Well, we do have some good episodes on YouTube.
Okay.
So if you do start following my YouTube channel, people can find it there, which is just my name, Julie Daniluk. Okay. And then the other thing I just want to remind people of is I do a lot of live coaching. So we have the hot detox programs that are a 21-day commitment, and then we also do deeper, longer coaching programs. So if people want to, just be in touch. I'm so excited that you're tapping in and willing to share. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I find you're a lovely listener, and that it was so easy to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are welcome. I just love the info and love sharing things with folks. And before you go, I do want to still put a little plug in for your 100-day Meals That Heal program that's coming out in September. I think folks should jump on your newsletter, sign up, and so that they can hear when things are coming out, because boy, if they're not local in the Toronto, Ottawa, area, and can't see you live at any of your venues, I think that, at least getting into a program with you would be ideal. Thank
you. My goodness. Yeah, I love our 100-day transformation program because it's long enough to weather the storms of life. That's why we created the 100-day transformation program, because anyone can stick to a diet for 30 days. But when you make a full choice to have that long-term immersion commitment, you really get a rhythm and the skills down to actually have your life change. And I can't help but fall in love with the people who participate in the program, because it's such a tight, intimate group that there's a tribe that ends up supporting one another, and there's a ton of amazing chatter that happens in our private group where people just are so loving. And then also we have coaching calls, unbelievable coaching calls, like so deep, like we've just talked. You can imagine that. I teach on Wednesdays. My husband teaches On Mondays, my sister, who's an applied kinesiologist and an herbalist, she's on Tuesdays. So you have multiple opportunities when you're having breakup, when you're having a real struggle with food addiction, to have a regular check-in call so that people feel, they feel that strength of community to break up with the foods that are causing them harm.
Oh my gosh.
And embracing the foods that make them feel amazing.
That is so cool. That's definitely a way to get people to live it, literally, in terms of living the healthy lifestyle versus just getting on a fad diet. I love it. Julie, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful day. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That was a fun podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Fad diets come and go, but Chinese dietary therapy principles have been around for 5,000 plus years. And you know what? They do work. I love Julie's Hot Detox book and the whole concept behind it. I have recommended this type of protocol to restore gut health for years, especially after folks have ulcers, colitis, infections, pancreatitis, and more. And honestly, it really, really does work. But prior to today, I didn't connect the concept of using it for those with food sensitivities. Julie is a genius, as food sensitivities really are a sign that the gut is becoming weak. And I'm here to tell you that I see this happening with folks as they get older, and myself included. The Chinese principles will tell you that the more you abuse your gut with processed food, overeating, not chewing enough, eating too late, not resting your gut, not eating while stressed, drinking alcohol in excess, and more, really do trash your gut and make it weak over time. I learned this all in school, and if I look at what really works, it's getting to the basics of the Chinese medicine principles of eating. And really, to take it to another level, I'd venture to say that if one combined Julie's Hot Detox book with Sarah Banta's Accelerated Detox Protocol, whoa, you're going to have the healthiest gut ever. By the way, Sarah's Accelerated Detox Protocol is podcast 139 of mine. So, if you are noticing you're becoming more sensitive to foods as you get older, get a hold of Julie's Hot Detox book or sign up for her program for added support. That's coming in September 2019, so get her newsletter, get on her email list, and find out when that's going to officially drop. Well, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, make sure that you head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. Share this information with your friends. Let them know about the Health Fix. I'm here to share information and keep you healthy. Hey everybody, Dr. Janine Krause here. If you liked what you heard today, then head over to drjkrausend.com to find my free resources and information to know when I post something new that's juicy that you might want to check out. Plus, head over to where you get your podcasts and subscribe, and write a review to help get the word out about me and help others at the same time to find me. It really does help, and I really appreciate all of your reviews.